think you're in control of your mind? Think again. Beneath the surface of your conscious thoughts rages a civil war, three factions locked in a brutal, unending struggle for dominance. The ID, the ego, and the superego, Freud's trinity of psychological forces that dictate every decision, every desire, every moment of hesitation in your life. The ID is the primal beast, screaming for instant gratification, hungry, lustful, ruthless. The superego is the moral tyrant, the voice of society's expectations, guilt-tripping you into submission. And the ego? The ego is the exhausted negotiator, caught in the crossfire, trying to maintain some semblance of sanity. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You are not the ego. You are not the rational, composed master of your mind. You are the battlefield. Every choice you make, every belief you hold, is nothing more than a temporary ceasefire in a war that never ends. So tell me, when was the last time you truly decided something for yourself? Or were you just obeying the loudest voice in your head? Let's talk about the ID, the untamed, unfiltered core of human nature. This is the part of you that doesn't care about morality, consequences, or societal norms. It wants what it wants, and it wants it now. Hunger, it demands food. Anger, it demands destruction. Lust, it demands satisfaction. Civilization has spent millennia trying to chain this beast, to bury it under layers of decency and restraint. But here's the brutal reality. The ID never dies. It only hides, waiting for the moment your guard drops. Ever felt a surge of rage in traffic? A dark fantasy you'd never admit to? That's not some flaw in your character. That's the ID, reminding you of what you really are beneath the mask. Society calls it ugly, unacceptable, sinful. But what if the ID isn't the enemy? What if it's the most honest part of you? The part that hasn't been brainwashed by rules, by shame, by the fear of judgment. The question isn't whether you can suppress the ID, it's whether you should. Because in crushing it, you might just be killing the last remnants of your true self. If the ID is the wild beast, then the superego is the prison warden. It's the internalized voice of every authority figure who ever told you what you should do. Parents, teachers, religion, culture, all whispering in your ear, shaping your guilt, your shame, your sense of right and wrong. But here's the sinister part. The superego doesn't care about your happiness, cares about control. It would rather see you miserable but obedient than free but immoral. Ever felt guilty for saying no? Ashamed of a desire that doesn't fit the mold? That's the superego's hand around your throat. And the worst part? You think it's you. You think these judgments are your own. But they're not. They're the echoes of centuries of conditioning, passed down like a psychological inheritance. So ask yourself, when you make a moral choice, is it truly yours? Or are you just a puppet, dancing to the tune of a morality you never questioned? The superego doesn't want you to think. It wants you to obey. And the moment you realize that is the moment you begin to reclaim your mind. Caught between the ID's chaos and the superego's tyranny stands the ego, the part of you that's desperately trying to hold it all together. It's the negotiator, the diplomat, the voice that says, let's be reasonable, but let's be honest. The ego is weak. It's outgunned on both sides. The ID is relentless, the superego is merciless, and the ego is just trying to survive. Every compromise you make, every rationalization you cling to, is a temporary truce in a war that never ends. And yet, we convince ourselves that the ego is us, that we are the logical, balanced masters of our fate. But how often does that hold up? One moment of stress, one slip in discipline, and the ID breaks free. One moment of doubt, and the superego crushes you with guilt. The ego isn't your true self. It's just the mask you wear to pretend you have control. So tell me, when the pressure hits, which force really wins? And if the ego is so fragile, why do we keep pretending it's in charge? Here's the hard truth. There is no victory in this war. The ID will always hunger. The superego will always judge. The ego will always struggle. So why bother? Because the battle itself is the point. A life without conflict is a life without growth. The ID teaches you desire, the superego teaches you restraint, and the ego? It teaches you balance, not as a permanent state, but as a constant negotiation. The goal isn't to eliminate any of them. It's to understand them, to recognize when the ID is driving you toward destruction, when the superego is suffocating you with guilt, and when the ego is lying to you about being in control. This isn't about winning. It's about awareness. Because the moment you see the game, you can start playing it instead of being played by it. So ask yourself, are you a prisoner of this war? Or are you finally ready to pick up the sword? You think you know yourself? Think again. The human mind is a master of deception, and its greatest trick is convincing you that you are the one in control. The ID disguises its impulses as passion. The superego masks its tyranny as virtue. And the ego? It spins stories to make you believe you're rational, that your choices are deliberate. But how often do you act on pure instinct, then retroactively justify it? How often do you obey some invisible rule, then pretend it was your idea? We are not the authors of our lives, we are the editors, scrambling to make sense of the chaos after the fact. And the sooner you admit that, the sooner you can start seeing through the lies. So tell me, what's the last decision you made that was truly yours? Or was it just another puppet show, with you as the unwitting marionette? The only way to break free is to see the game for what it is. The ID, the ego, the superego, they're not you. They're forces, currents in the ocean of your mind. And the moment you realize that, you gain something rare: choice. Not control, never full control, but the ability to step back, to observe, to question. Why am I feeling this urge? Whose voice is this guilt? Is this my desire, or just another program running in the background? Awareness doesn't stop the war, but it gives you a seat at the table. It turns you from a pawn into a player. And that's where real power begins. Because the greatest prison is the one you don't know you're in. So ask yourself, are you awake yet? Or are you still asleep at the wheel? Most people live their entire lives without ever questioning these forces. They chase pleasure, ID, they obey rules, superego, and they tell themselves they're in charge, ego. And then they wonder why they feel empty, conflicted, trapped. They blame the world, their circumstances, their luck. But the real enemy is inside. Ignorance isn't bliss, it's slavery. Because if you don't understand the forces driving you, you'll spend your life reacting, not choosing. You'll be a leaf in the wind, tossed between desire and duty, never knowing why. So here's the challenge: stop running. Turn and face the storm in your mind. It's the only way to stop being its victim. Mastery isn't about silencing the ID or defying the superego. It's about integration. The ID's raw power, the superego's discipline, the ego's adaptability. When harnessed, they become tools, not tyrants. The ID fuels your ambition. The superego sharpens your ethics. The ego navigates the world. But this takes work. It takes brutal honesty, relentless self-examination, and the courage to face what you find. Most people never try. They'd rather stay divided, fractured, at war with themselves. But you have a choice. Will you remain a battleground, or will you become the general? This is your wake-up call. Not a gentle nudge, but a thunderous strike against the illusion that you are anything less than a battlefield. The ID, the ego, the superego, they are not abstract concepts. They are living, breathing forces tearing through your every thought, your every decision, your every moment of weakness. And here's the brutal truth. Ignoring them doesn't make them disappear. It just makes them stronger. The ID grows hungrier in the dark. The superego tightens its grip when unchallenged. The ego, desperate to keep the peace, will sell you lies just to maintain the illusion of control. But you You have a choice. You can remain a passive casualty in this war, torn between impulse and guilt, forever at the mercy of forces you refuse to name. Or you can step onto the field not as a victim but as a warrior. This isn't about fixing yourself. It's about owning yourself. Every savage desire, every suffocating rule, every fragile compromise. The ID is not your enemy. It is your fire, your raw will to live, the unapologetic force that refuses to be tamed. The superego is not your jailer. It is your compass, the voice that reminds you that power without ethics is just tyranny. And the ego? It is not your identity. It is your strategist, the negotiator that turns chaos into action. But none of them serve you until you acknowledge them, confront them, and command them. Most people live their entire lives in denial. They call their ID weakness, their superego morality, their ego reason, never realizing they've been tricked into fighting on all sides without ever choosing a side. But you don't have that luxury anymore, because now you know. Now you see the war, and in that seeing, you are given the only weapon that matters, awareness. The awareness to feel the ID's hunger and ask, is this driving me, or am I driving it? The awareness to hear the superego's judgment and demand, whose voice is this, really? The awareness to watch the ego's justifications and challenge, am I lying to myself again? This is the path to true power, not the illusion of control, but the mastery of understanding. Not the absence of conflict, but the courage to face it. The war inside you will never end. But from this moment forward, you get to decide how you fight it. Will you let the ID rule you in moments of passion, only to let the superego punish you after? Will you let the ego spin stories to keep you small, safe, and stagnant? Or will you rise, not above these forces, but through them? The choice is yours. The battle is now. And the stakes? Your entire fucking life. So tell me, when the next wave of desire, guilt, or doubt crashes over you, what will you do? Keep pretending you're not at war? Or pick up the sword and fight like your soul depends on it? Because it does.